My name is Paul Wolliver. I'm the owner of Pinellas Power Products. This is the installation instruction video for my extended runtime fuel kits for generators that use the Ratto 149cc engine. That would include the Generac 3300i, the Craftsman 3300i, and there's a rumor that there will be a DeWalt 3300 and a Stanley 3300, which will all use the same engine. The manufacturer of the engine is in dispute, but that's not really important. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using a Generac 3300 to show the installation process. The process will be the same regardless of what color the cabinet is. Obviously the cabinet on the Craftsman is red, and the DeWalt will probably be yellow, and who knows what color the Stanley will be. The kit is going to come with everything you need except for the fuel tank itself. It'll come with written instructions, a flash drive with a copy of this video, and then all the other components that you're going to need, and we'll go through the components as I start installing them. First step will be to pull the two side covers off. And the screws on the side covers are captive, so they'll stay with the cover itself. This side has the recoil start rope, so we won't be taking the cover all the way off. We'll just pull it far enough out of the way and then clamp the start rope so that it doesn't cause us any problems. Next, we'll pull the front cover off, and that's held in place with 4 small Phillips head screws. Before I take the last screw off, I'm going to take the fuel selector knob off. Okay. If you look inside here, you'll see 2 small black wires with a connector. We're going to undo those, and what those are is the ignition kill. And on this particular generator, when the fuel knob is turned to the off position, which it's in right now, it not only shuts off the fuel, but it shuts off the spark. This would be the start position with choke, this would be the run position, and this would be the off position. So we are going to separate the micro switch that's run off a cam on the fuel selector knob so that we can shut off the fuel and the ignition separately. And this will do 2 things. Number one, it's going to allow us to switch back and forth from the remote tank to the generator's onboard fuel tank, but it will also allow you to shut off the fuel and leave the engine running in order to run the fuel out of the float bowl in the carburetor if you're going to be storing it for a little while. What we're going to do is install the switch that comes in the kit. And I'm going to install the switch right here. It's got to be far enough down so that it does not interfere with the fuel knob. And I'm not going to drill right through the decal that labels the USB charge ports, because you want to be able to read that decal. So I'm going to mount it right here. We want to be far enough this way that the switch doesn't interfere with this reinforcement, but far enough away from the fuel selector valve that it doesn't interfere with that. The drill bit size, I believe, is at 3/16. Okay, if you look at the switch, you'll see that there are two wires going to the top of the switch as it's shown, and then one non-used pin at the bottom. So when you install the switch, make it so that the top, or the part where the two wires go in, is facing up. If it is facing down, then when you go to flip the switch, up will be the off position and down will be the on position. And let's face it, it makes more sense if up is the run position and down is the off position. If, when you go to start the generator, if you put the switch in the on position, which should be run, and it doesn't work, but you flip it down to the what should be the off position and it suddenly starts up and runs, that means you've got the switch in upside down, and you simply loosen up the nuts and spin the switch right side up. So it's not a big issue. Okay, I'm going to ream that out just a little bit. Okay, the switch is going to come with two nuts and then a friction washer. I'm going to put the friction washer between the two nuts so that they'll work like a lock nut binding against each other. If you choose to put the friction washer against the mount plate and then tighten both the nuts down against it, that's your choice. Okay, so then you'll take the plug that's on the switch and plug it into the corresponding plug that you just unplugged on the generator. These two used to be connected. Used to be these connected, so you're going to disconnect that, and now you're going to plug my switch in. This wire will be left hanging loose, and it goes to a switch that's no longer used in there. So now that will be run and that will be off. Okay, we want to make sure that the fuel selector valve is in the off position so we don't have gasoline pouring out for the next steps. Go ahead and open up the spark plug hole or spark plug cover. If you look in here, you will see that there is a fitting coming off of the intake manifold with a rubber plug on the end of it. See if we can get some better light on that. This rubber plug right here, can you see that? Okay. So we're just going to slide in there with a pair of pliers, pull that rubber plug off, and hopefully not drop it. And there's the rubber plug. Then included in the kit is going to be a section of 3/16 hose. And this 3/16 hose will go right on that fitting that plug came off of. I'm going to use just a little bit of oil on the hose to slide it onto that barb, just to make it a little bit easier. Okay. And it's all the way on there. Okay. Included in the kit, in the bag of small parts, there are two different sizes of hose clamps. The smaller hose clamps are for the 3/16 hose, like this one. The bigger hose clamps are for the 1/4" hose, which we'll get to later. So I'm going to put this hose clamp in place. Hang on a second. Okay. Then we'll come over to this side. And you'll see the fuel selector valve. Right here, there's a Corbin clamp on the hose that comes straight out the back. We're going to remove that Corbin clamp and then slide that hose off. And a little bit of gas will drip out because there was gas in the hose. Okay. So then take the fuel pump, pull the covers off of it. There are 3 spigots on the fuel pump. This will be the pulse line, this will be fuel going into the pump, and this will be fuel coming out of the pump. There's a section of 1/4" fuel hose. you'll take the 1/4 inch fuel hose and you will cut off a section 21 1/4 inches long. The 21 1/4 inch section will go to the fuel output port on the pump. That'll be this one. And I'm going to have the hose, it has a natural curve because it came off of a roll. So I'm going to have the curve set to where it goes up. And then we'll put a hose clamp on this hose here. And this will be one of the larger hose clamps included in the kit. And we're going to cut a 3 1/4 inch section of hose off this 1/4 inch hose. The 3 1/4 inch is going to go to the fuel input line. And that'll get a hose clamp as well. Then we'll take a 4 1/4 inch section of this 1/4 inch hose. That'll go onto the pulse line. And that'll get another hose clamp. Now this hose clamp I'm going to put where the crimp portion of it faces back over the fuel pump so that the fuel pump isn't as fat this way. Because the cabinet is fairly small on this generator, we don't have a lot of extra room. Okay, included in the kit is a reducer that goes from 1/4 inch to 3/16. So this is going to go into the hose that goes to the pulse line, which will be the one that we installed last, the 4 1/4 inch section of hose. I'm going to put just a little bit of oil on that, makes it easier. If you don't have a lid full of oil, you can unscrew the dipstick and just use the dipstick to put a couple drops of oil on it. Just don't forget to screw the dipstick back in before you go starting the generator, or it'll fire up and shoot all the oil out at you and install, because the low oil warning will come on. Then there is a T-fitting, 1/4 inch T-fitting. You'll install the 1/4 inch T-fitting in the 3 1/4 inch hose, and that will get a hose clamp. Then we're going to take a 16 1/2 inch hose. So let's go ahead and put the pump in first, then we'll come back and cut that. The pump is going to sit behind this plate here. There's a clear plastic hose coming off the carburetor, and what that's for is a fuel drain line. So we're going to run our hose underneath that clear plastic hose, and then we're going to turn and make it come out the other side of the generator here. What I'm doing is making sure that the hose doesn't interfere with any of the wiring. I'm going to pull this out. And the fuel pump is going to sit, like I said earlier, right behind this webbing. We'll just feed those two hoses out so we can see them. Then included in the kit is also a 1/4 inch elbow fitting. As you remember, this hose is on the output line from the fuel pump. So it's going to connect to this hose that we removed from the back of the fuel selector valve, because that went from the fuel selector valve to the carburetor. So now this line is going to go to the carburetor. So we're going to check our hoses just to make sure that they're long enough and they're not kinked or pinched or anything like that. And that length is going to work out perfectly. You could trim about 3/4 of an inch off of this hose, but I don't recommend doing that. I would rather have the hoses just a little bit longer than they need to be so that I can trim them off later. It's always easier to trim them off than to have one that's just flat too short. Do you need a flashlight to see what you're looking at in there? Okay. This was the stock hose, and I'm going to slide the Corbin clamp up to here, and that's the clamp that was originally on the generator. And then I'm going to get one of the large nylon clamps to put on this side. And these would be the clamps that come in my kit. Okay, if you come back around this side. This line is the pulse line, the one with the reducer. So we're going to take the 3/16 hose that we put on that test port on the manifold. We're going to route it up around the spark plug, so it's going to go up in a U shape because the hose barb faces this direction, so it's going to go around in a U shape and then come back down right here next to the cylinder head. Just a little bit of oil on that. this, we'll use one of the smaller hose clamps included in the kit. I'm going to cut a 16¼ inch. I'm going to go all the way to 16½ because that way if it's just a little bit too long, I can always cut it shorter. And remember the T connector that we installed earlier? This hose is going to go onto that T connector. And then we'll put one of our nylon clamps on that. Then we're going to feed this right above the air box, and you can see straight through. I don't know if it'd be easier if I shine the light on the other side so that you can see the light bulb. So we're going to pass it through that gap. Okay, come on around here. This hose is going to go on the back of the fuel selector valve right here on that hose bar that we removed the original stock hose from. Okay, now you see the hose, and it's on the back of the fuel selector valve. Then I'm going to take a large nylon clamp and put it on that. Okay, can you see it in there now? I'm going to take the clamp off the recoil start rope. Hopefully that cover is heavy enough to hold the start rope into place. I do not want to allow this hose to flop freely like that, because if it does touch the recoil start rope, the recoil start rope can cut through this hose. So I'm going to use one of the zip ties included in the kit to zip tie this hose up here to the front of the recoil start housing. That way it doesn't go anywhere near the rope. And you're going to get several of these zip ties in the kit. And anywhere you see that just doesn't look safe, use them. So now this hose is zip tied out of the way. And I'm also going to zip tie this purge line. And what I'll do is I'll zip tie that to this hose so it stays away from there too. That's interesting that stock, they just left the hose able to flop around on that purge line. Okay. What I'm doing is just checking to make sure that none of the hoses are kinked or bent at too sharp of an angle or rubbing against anything that moves. Okay. So all this looks good here. I'm going to take the final section of hose and put it onto this last remaining barb on the T-fitting. I'm going to take this end of it and I'm going to feed it up over the muffler and out the other side of the generator. Like that. Take another hose clamp. Crimp that down. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to mount the fuel inlet for the generator. And I'm going to mount it right back here because if you look at the generator, if you pull this apart, you'll see that there's a fuel tank that goes from about the sticker all the way forward and wraps around the other side, so we cannot put it anywhere there. Over on this side, it makes it a little too difficult, or a little more difficult, to service the spark plug. So I'm putting it back here, which is a nice open area where it won't interfere with anything else. The way that the fuel fitting mounts is you've got a hose barb and a quick disconnect fitting, and they'll screw down together, and it creates a pinch point between here and here. When you tighten it down, it'll actually pinch on the plastic housing of the generator. There is a web, if you stick your hand up in here, you can feel it, that's almost even with the end of this sticker. So I'm going to go back about 1.5 inches and drill my hole there. If you're using a step drill like I use, be careful not to go too deep because the hole gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes in. So I've got the hole started. I'm going to use a repairman's reamer to open it up the rest of the way. That way I don't mess up and have too big a hole. What I'm doing right now is just tearing away just a little bit of foam from around the hole on the bottom side. Okay. The kit also comes with a roll of Teflon tape. So you'll take the Teflon tape and you'll wrap it around the threads in the direction that the hose barb screws on. Be very careful not to overlap the end. So as I'm wrapping around, if I were to wrap it over like that, when I screw the hose barb on, it would shear off this little piece of Teflon tape, and that would work its way into the fuel system. So you want to get up to the edge, but not actually overlapping it. And put several layers of tape on it. Shorter wrench. The trick is we want it to get to where it pinches down tight on this at the same time that the connectors face forward. You need that longer wrench just to get a grip on it. what I'm doing is going in through the spark plug cover and putting a long wrench on the hose barb. Now what I want to do is make sure that I didn't move any of these hoses out of the way. My 3/16 hose is still in place. Then what we'll do is the 1/4 inch hose that we put on the other side and fed through, we want to make sure that it does not go down and fall behind the exhaust cover. So what I'm going to do is turn it, bring it down here, and then come up in a gentle loop. And I'll cut it right about here. It feels like it's a little too long, and test fit it by pushing it up, like the hose barb's coming out of here, and I'll push it up next to the hose barb to check my length. Okay. That actually feels pretty good. Because this is so tight in here, if it is too long, I can take a little bit off of this end of it. Pliers get a hold of that better. Okay, I don't know if you can see this or not. The hose is coming down into a gentle loop, and it's going right onto the bottom of this hose barb. Okay, yeah. And now what I'm going to do is put a hose clamp on it. I'm going to put a zip tie right around these two hoses just to hold them together so that they don't flop around, because we do have enough zip ties to do that with. Okay. This hose, remember, is the output hose from the fuel pumps. So this is what takes the fuel and puts it into the carburetor. So we're going to put the fuel filter in this hose right here. So we'll cut the hose. The only reason why I wait till the very last to do this is because you've got to see where everything's going to line up at. There are two arrows on the filter and they point in the direction of fuel flow. So obviously it flows from the pump to the carburetor. Once again, we'll go through and make sure that none of the hoses have sharp bends on them or kinks or run across any sharp objects. The kit comes with an additional fuel fitting, and that fuel fitting will get screwed into your fuel tank that you supply. And it's the same as, so they're interchangeable. It doesn't matter which fitting you put on which end. The next step is the decal with the instructions for operating it. And I'll go over the instructions in the demonstration video, but I will say this right now. Step 7 is not a misprint. That's where it tells you that in order to run off the stock tank, the fuel selector valve must be in the on position. To run off the remote tank, the fuel selector valve must be in the off position. And I'm just going to put the decal right up here. Okay, I'm going to put the cover with the recoil rope on first, because then I can take one last peek through from the other side to make sure that nothing is coming close to the recoil start rope. Okay, and the recoil rope has plenty of clearance. And that concludes the install. If you have any questions or anything like that, and you're watching this on YouTube, please look in the description section of the video, and it's got a link to my website. At my website, you have my email address and my phone number. Don't hesitate to call me. Or if you go to the website, it's got everything in writing right there, as well as links to other videos that you can look and get all the information you need. But as I said earlier, don't hesitate to call or email me if you have any additional questions. Otherwise, I thank you for your time.